Alright, today I am going to be showing off this really good, really nice, hard Uchigumori Jito stone. It's really hard to get them in this hardness. It's hard for Uchi, but it is not necessarily harder than, a normal Alisado. I would say it's about right at an Alisado. Yeah, it leaves a brighter polish than the coarser Uchigumori, but it is a very silky smooth stone. Where regular Uchi, especially Hato, you can kind of feel the abrasive a little bit more. With this one, it feels slightly smoother. I compared it to my two other hardest Jitos, and this one is the winner. Which is astounding because those other two that I have came from Namakawa, and that was the hardest they had in stock. And this one here is slightly harder than my hardest, and it's a little bit more harder than the second hardest. So I feel like I have a good progression now in Uchi, having 3 or 4 Hato and 4 or 5 Jito now. I feel like I've got a pretty good spectrum of Uchi. That, not to say that I would start polishing the Hato, but for my own work, the varying hardnesses in the steels that I make with bloomery or Western Maine Tamahagane, I have the ability to polish for Hidori without a problem, really. I shouldn't really run into any issues finding compatible stones with steel. But anyway, so this one is a little bit darker, or maybe darker and grayish than some of my others. It's really also a good stone as far as cleanliness goes. I have this one little shallow rust inclusion that does nothing, doesn't hurt me at all. And then a very light line that goes through here that isn't considered a toxic line. These are the thinnest of thin hairline lines that you'll find in especially Suida, that are just there. They don't affect any sharpening. You can't feel them with your nail or knife or bevel. They don't scratch. It's just there. It's just cosmetic. Yeah, so this stone here is like 33 millimeters thick. It's right at, I wouldn't try to get them any thinner than this Uchi, because eventually if I actually use this for swords or anything like that, it would be domed slightly, so I would be losing some of the thickness in this area on both sides, though I would probably just start on one side and then polish from there. Alright, without further ado, we're going to take the test knife that you've seen. I just got done polishing this on that beautiful Nakayama Kita, the hand-sawn one. So, the polish is perfect. It's difficult to take that away, but this leaves a beautiful polish as well. Not as fine, but very lustrous. So we can go ahead and show you. Water only. I let it soak for a few minutes prior. I didn't lap it though for my last use, and hopefully it doesn't bite me, which I can kind of feel it, but should have probably put this in a stone holder, because in the bottom it's a little bit lipped here, and makes it want to pop up a little bit, but not too big of a deal, because it's a very small lip, and it really only gets you when you're on that side. But when it's flooded with water like this on a bevel, you can see how hard it is. I'm flooded with water. I could probably use less water. Let that dry up some. It won't take long to dry up, because it is a hard stone, but it's hard for Uchi. It's not like insanely hard for Japanese natural stones. But this doesn't scratch, so it's not that hard. This is like the perfect hard Jito. probably make better contact with the stone if I would lap it, but I don't want to do too much lapping it flat on this stone, just because eventually I am going to convex the top, and I don't want to necessarily take stone away for wide bevel knives. You know what I mean? I don't really use Uchigumori on wide bevels. But you can already see some of the wider kasumi forming on there. I mean, that is a really nice scratchless polish as well. I mean, it's the last couple of stones, or last pile of stones I've gotten lately have just been stellar. I've had some really good luck in getting some really good ones. And this one's no exception. This is an Uchi that I just could not pass up. I've been looking for a hardest Jito for a long time. I felt like the ones I had for Namikawa could be a little bit harder for some of the G on a piece of homemade Western Nihonto, well, Japanese inspired Tanto. And so that's darkening the cladding. So this is drying out. It's going to create a little bit more mud, or a drier mud that's way more abrasive. So I was using a, which I don't have out here, but a Takohiki. I was using that on this last, so you know that's a very narrow blade, and moving that across this stone, it really, you know, it really divots, you know, creates an impression in the stone, because there's so much concentrated in an area. So yeah, this is my finest Uchi. I mean, this is an awesome Uchi. This is beautiful. These are beautiful finish on cladding knives, but you know, so do a lot of other stones. And in my opinion, Uchi, even though they work good on a wide bevel, really shine on hard steels. And so that's one of the reasons why they're using the Nihonto, especially at the end. The hardness and abrasive power of these stones, they're soft enough, and yet they rub the steel at a perfect ratio between the two that doesn't scratch hard steel. Okay, it shows the details in the steel. And just to be clear, the hamon on a katana, the softer portion, that's still considered a harder than this cladding steel. I don't have exact RC numbers on it, but there are some hardening effect that's going on in the G of a blade that is not present in the cladding of a knife, and that's obvious if you just polish between the two. You would know. So that's why really testing an Uchi with a cladded knife really isn't the best way to test an Uchi. It doesn't really give you the full detail on the stone, because for the most part, Uchis leave the same finish on cladding that a softer or harder one will. With some exception, the softest ones will be a little scratchier, but they typically leave about the same darkened finish on the cladding across the board. So I can achieve that finish on cladding and other stones, so why not save these prized specific stones for my Hanyaki or Nihonto inspired blades. So anyway, scratchless finish on a hard Uchi. You can see there's very little anything created in that. There's a lot of burnishing power in this stone. So I have a feeling it's going to be awesome on the G to show the details above the Uchi and on a katana. So I'm pretty excited to use it for testing like that. And of course, the same kiradashi as before. You can see it used, of course this is a platted kiradashi, same thing as the knife. But it's a smaller area. You can see it generating, doing this a little uneven. It's making enough contact that it's really cutting steel. You know, it's hard to get out of an Uchi sometimes because you get a lot of softer Uchis out there. It's really hard to come by a hard Jito like this. So it's creating just steel swarf versus a lot of mud. You know, you can tell that by the color, the speed at which it did it. That's one of the ways you can tell between a Hato and a Jito. Especially because a Hato is so obvious. You know, you've seen my other videos where it creates a fair bit of mud. But yep, scratchless, beautiful finish on this hard Uchigumori Jito. Hope you guys enjoyed. I of course enjoy using stones and always will. This is a lifelong obsession. So until next time guys, see ya.